Take a look at the all-state playoff predictor. See who has the best chance of making the college football playoff. At least according to the playoff predictor, 3 teams have separated themselves, as we've touched on. Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson, all with a better than 70% chance. Wisconsin hanging around at number 4, but as I alluded to earlier, Graham Mertz, who was sensational opening night, has tested positive for the coronavirus. That means he's out for 21 days. Their presumptive starter, Jack Cohn, had already been injured and was out, and now Mertz's backup also out due to testing positive. So they're going to be well down on the depth chart in terms of finding a quarterback to start. But really, above that, you have Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. David, is the separation as big as it seems between those 3 and the rest?
Well, I think it is because of what we just mentioned earlier. I think you got to be able to score points, and those 3 quarterbacks. By the way, Justin Fields, we talked about Graham on Friday night lighting it up. He just kind of went out there and did the same exact thing. I mean, just unbelievable. And then he can run, he can throw. So it's ridiculous. But yeah, I think they have, because you're going to get consistency with their offense. I think there's separation. I think Clemson separated themselves as the number 1 team. I think Alabama's separated themselves as number 2, and then Ohio State separated themselves as number 3. So I think those 3, there's a gap, but I also think there's a gap between those 3 as well, Reese.
Reese, I would just add that I think the reputation of those 3 teams separates them from the rest of the pack. But, Alabama, what they've done, Clemson, what they've done, Ohio State, what they've done. But if you're just looking at 2020, we just talked about just the one game for Ohio State. And while they put up points and they got a great passing game and an elite quarterback that's a difference maker, they still are a working product, or a working process, obviously, because, they played one game. So I don't know if I would put them there yet, personally, after watching them against Nebraska. I still think that, I can't wait to see, how great teams improve from week 1 to week 2. But those great Ohio State teams from 14 when they won it all, 15, 16, 17, 19, those teams had difference makers. We just talked about at the defensive line spot, the running back spot. And right now we're still watching. So, Joey, in the Big Ten alone, forget the nation, we've seen an improved Michigan team after 1 week. Who knows what's going on with Wisconsin with their quarterback situation. So I think Ohio State's not quite up there yet after what we saw against Nebraska, but we'll know a lot more Saturday night when they get done playing at State College.
I agree with you. And quite honestly, what my ear hears you saying, Herb, is basically you agree with what I said to start the show. You just didn't want to agree then, but you come back around like you always do, and you agree with what I said, that Ohio State hadn't quite made that jump to separate from everyone else. Now, we expect them to. We know that they're talented. But I would agree with you in saying that Michigan team that we watched play Minnesota looked really good. And so there isn't that tremendous separation that we expected to see this past weekend and what Ohio State did on the field. But by the end of this, and we all expect to see that separation. But as we sit here today, I think Notre Dame has an argument just because they were able to actually throw a couple passes. We didn't know that they could throw the ball. Now, they went against a Pitt defense that has been in a struggle, but still Ian Book had his best game throwing the football, which makes them different. And Georgia has a championship-level defense. We're talking mostly offense, and when we're talking about these top 3 teams, Georgia probably has the best defense out of anyone. So it's going to be tough for them to get there. But at the same time, I wouldn't see a great separation between those top 3 and the teams behind them.
I do think there is, Joey, a separation between Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State and everybody else for 2 reasons. I think 1 is the quarterback play, and 2, to me, they don't have as many glaring weaknesses as maybe the 4, 5, 6, 7 as you go down the list. We already know about what Trevor Lawrence has done in his career at Clemson. How about Mac Jones? I think he should be the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. And how about the fact that they go out without Jalen Waddle, and that offense still puts up 41 points against what I think is a good Tennessee defense this past weekend. We know what we get with Justin Fields. He was sensational, as we mentioned. We don't know how good Nebraska is. The run game didn't look great. Run defense and tackling wasn't great early. We'll find out a lot more when they play Penn State this weekend. But I think once you get beyond that and you look at Georgia, and I agree with what you said, Joey, I love that defense, but is Stetson Bennett, is he a game manager or is he a difference maker? And with Notre Dame, passing game looked better, but is the passing game enough to beat Clemson on November 7th or hang in that game. Spencer Sanders at Oklahoma State adds a lot to the running game. What about the passing game? We've really only seen him play once this year because of injury. So to me, fewer glaring issues with Clemson, Bama, and Ohio State versus everybody else.
I agree, Jesse, because I think the talent difference across the board is very, very different. But I will say this. I think no Jalen Waddle will make a big difference. I mean, you watch that Georgia game, it was his ability to go 90 and open up the game and change the game. His ability in the return game, whether it be punt or kickoffs, his explosive nature, I do think that's something to watch. I know Mac Jones is going to cover it up and he's going to make big plays. But when you start to play really good corners down the stretch and you can now double Devontae Smith, and listen, I know Michi's good and those other guys are good, but I would take my chances with them beating me rather than a guy that runs 4.2 for God's sakes.
Well, he was the best player in the country that didn't play quarterback. He got them so many hidden yards because teams would rather punt the ball 25 yards than risk having 17 touch it. All eyes were on him on every offensive snap. I still think Alabama's going to be potent on offense, but it's going to be different.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.